Well, hello, Zwift Power Up Cycling Podcast. I'm Matt Rowe, having a chat today with Coach Hendy and Kev Poulton.
G'day guys, pleasure to be back. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yep, how you going guys? Let's get into it.
Alright, well today we're talking track cycling. We're looking back at the World Champs recently. Kev, stop smiling. And we've got we've got a guest who knows a lot about track cycling, who's actually my wife, Dani Rowe, who's won 3 world titles, a world bronze, an Olympic gold in the team pursuit, plus a bunch of European titles. And Greg had a chat with Dani. Here it is. And Greg, you've won countless World Cups, and you've won a track title as well, haven't you?
Yep, I've been around the block on the track a few times, that's for sure.
Good man. All right, well let's get into your chat with my wife.
Well, lovely to be joined with us this morning from where I'm from in Dunedin, but evening for you, Dani Rowe. Thanks for joining the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Let's have a obviously the 2019 track champs have just finished, and who better to talk about it than two weapons like ourselves to have a crack at the analysis of the world champs. There was the speed at which they were racing, the times in which they were doing, and actually the dominance from some countries was actually quite incredible. What was one of the standout performances for you?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I've never been described as a weapon before, but I'll take that anyway. But yeah, for me, the Australians and the Dutch riders, as teams in general, really stood out to me. Obviously the team pursuit women, which is what I kind of follow most closely, having been a team pursuiter myself. Yeah, it is usually a Great Britain dominance, but it was, fair play to the Australians getting one over on us Brits this year. I think they've really shown that they're kind of making big gains in that team pursuit. So I think in the following year to 18 months to the games, it'll be really exciting to follow that progress. Obviously Kirsten Wild from the Netherlands, keeping on the women's results, was standout again. I think it's really impressive that she backed up and won the women's Omnium again. I think it's hard to kind of back that, that world title up. Not many people can do that. So I was really impressed with that. Who did you think was most impressive?
Yeah, I don't know if she was on the same condition that she was in her home country, but I mean that's probably to be expected. But yeah, no, to back up the Omnium, what the Omniums are like, you've got to be absolutely consistent throughout 4 events, and I mean she's a fantastic bike rider. Yeah,
totally. So tactically good as well. Watching her, she just knows exactly where she needs to be at the right time. And yeah, I don't know whether it's her form that's maybe not quite as good as it was last year, the home crowd, or actually the fact that other nations are stepping up and becoming better at the event as well.
Well, we are 1 year out from the Olympic Games, so it is probably time to pull finger. Exactly. I was going to have a quick chat about the men's team's pursuit. I just remember watching the must have been first round where the Aussie boys raced against us, the Kiwis, and we'd qualified pretty well. We qualified in 4th place, and the Aussies obviously qualified fastest. And then we sort of had a mental milkshake halfway through the ride, and the wheels started falling off. But I was going through the lap times, and it's incredible. They were riding 13.7, 13.8, 14.0, 13.9, 14.0, and then they caught New Zealand. And New Zealand were in bits and pieces. And you see one of their laps, they go from 13.9, 14.1 to they go out to a 15.4.
Wow.
And that's to go around New Zealand, and then they just try and grab it back. They do a 14.6, and then they come back down to a 14.3. See, I mean, that was first round. If they hadn't had to go around New Zealand, for sure the world record was on right there and then, and I think that gave them the confidence too. I mean, they knew. I mean, as a bike rider, we're on the world record pace here, and then unfortunately they had that, not mishap, but they had that situation in racing where they had to go round at a stagnated team, and it cost them so much time. Just by looking at their lap times, I mean, you go from a 14.1 to a 15.4, that's 1.3 seconds right there. and they still rode 3:51.
Yeah, they were so impressive. I think, everyone kind of could see it coming after the results they've had in the past couple of competitions. And we knew that world record was going to come at some point. But to do that time, in the final was just outstanding. And yeah, like you say, I think that obviously gave them the confidence that even having to go round the New Zealand team, that it was in the tank. And they just looked so controlled. And I think that's the thing with team pursuit. Almost the racing is easy when you've got it nailed, when you've got that kind of pace strategy nailed. Everyone's going well, they're committing to their turns. Technically, they're obviously riding well to, save as much energy as they can so they can produce as much power on the front. It all comes together, and you could just see that throughout all three rides from the Aussie guys. And it was just, to do a 48, was it, in the final?
48, yeah.
Yeah, it's just that is absolutely rapid. To put it into perspective, I think my best ever flying lap time, so one lap as fast as I could go with a kind of lead in off the top of the track, was about their lap splits. So, and they've obviously held that for 16 laps off a standing start. So they must have been pushing a big gear as well to sustain that speed.
It's all about also when you think about if you come off a wheel that's slowing down, the energy that it costs you to actually then build the pace back up and get you back on race pace, that costs you, and you could probably only can do at that speed, 65 km an hour plus, you can probably only do that one or two times before you can't lift pace again. So you can just tell we had 4 perfect bike riders in exact same condition, all holding pace, not dropping pace, and riding 13 9-second laps. It was just something to. It was just like it's one of those rides where you watch and you're just going. It looked easy, You watch them and it looks perfect. It looks all in shape and it looks comfortable. And then you see this when it stops the clock and you're like, huh? Have they got a lap to go?
Yeah, definitely. And like you said as well about slowing down, I think as well it was almost as important not to speed up. Because like you say, if you drop pace on the front or lift pace, it means the guys behind aren't kind of getting that maximal rest that they need to then be able to hold pace themselves on the front. I know for us, it wasn't always the riders that got selected that could hold and build the pace. It was the riders that were consistent on whatever kind of lap strategy you were going for. You held that pace, whether you had more in the tank or not. If you had more in the tank, you'd go longer, not faster. Then, kind of building that pace of the riders behind were having to put out more power to keep up with you, essentially.
That's a really, really good point, actually. And not a lot of people know that is, okay, yeah, sure, you can bang through on your team's pursuit and you can lift the pace by whatever and put your whole team under pressure and do your lap and get out of there. But it just absolutely destroys the legs of the team. So like you said, if you feel stronger or if you're having a good day, you don't go faster, you go longer, and it gives everyone in the team a little bit extra rest, and then that effectively accumulates to a faster time.
Yeah, also the less amount of kind of changes that you've got to do throughout the ride, you're saving time there as well. So I think that's what you're seeing now in team pursuit. They're going for longer on the front, minimising the amount of times they've got to change, and then that's why these times are tumbling down. I think the gears are also getting bigger. So, for example, I spoke to Laura Kenny and I rode a 100.8 in London Olympics, which is 56.15 for the chain
Jesus,
ring.
I don't even think Matt could push that. Carry on.
No, probably not. And now they've gone even bigger. So, they're riding up to a 110-inch gear. So, I think there's a big emphasis on gym and strength. There was when I was riding, but even more so now. So that's also quite an interesting point. I think the cadence has come down a bit and the gears have gone up. Yeah,
the fastest time I rode in a team's pursuit was on a 92.5-inch gear, and I rode 4 minutes flat. I think I had 4,800 RPM average.
Yeah, you must have.
It was crazy, but how things have changed. I remember when I won the medal in the Madison, I remember I rode with Hayden Ralston, and he put 91.8-inch gear on, and I thought, oh no, I'm going to put a big gear on. So I rode 92.5-inch gear. So just the way things are changing now, it's just incredible. Just going back to that team's pursuit really quickly, I had a quick chat with Lee Howard, and I was just curious as to obviously they're riding those huge gears off the line, and then once they hit the front, what sort of power do they have to do? And he was kind enough to reply, and he said, look, it's actually not too difficult off the start. It's only 1250, sometimes 1300 off the start, which for those powerful guys, that spend so much time in the gym, it's actually not bad power off the start. And he said, once you're in line, it can be so nice. If you get a perfect change, you can be doing 280, 300 watts down the back straight. And then when he hit the front, he'd be doing 650, 700 watts on the front. But he said it's all about delivery speed. So if I came off a fast wheel or a wheel holding pace, all you had to do was that 700 watts. And like, to take this back to road cycling, it was the same thing when we did the lead out for Andre Greipel. People would say, oh, what sort of wattage did you do? You were flying there in the sprint. And the thing is, I would be coming off the wheel of Jürgen Rollins, which was super fast. So all I had to do was lift pace by 2 k's an hour. I may hit 1100 watts in the sprint, but I'd just hold 900 watts for forever. It's not huge power because you're already going so fast. So it's definitely about, I would call, a cumulative speed.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, in the wheels, it's all about recovery. It's that intermittent power, isn't it? You're trying to recover as much as you can, get as aero as you can, to do as least power as you can in the wheels, to then, be able to hopefully come off that fast wheel and just hold whatever it might be. I know for me, it was the high 400s watts. And then in the wheels, I was, like Lee said, high 200s to low 300s. For myself. And I think, now aero kind of gains are getting more efficient as well. Those powers in the wheels are actually, I don't think the powers are going up that much more kind of substantially. It's just getting faster and faster through the kind of aero gains, and then obviously these bigger gears that they're being able to push throughout the race.
Those aero gains are incredible. You just see every year it changes a little bit. I tell you who I reckon have become actually some of the leading influences is that Hub Watt Bike team, or Hub Watt Bike team. They just seem to have started crushing it now. You can see so many teams copying their position.
Yeah, and I think for me they've been really inspiring to see. Actually, they've kind of done everything off their own back, and not just the kind of aero gains, but the way they ride in a team pursuit with their kind of crazy change techniques, with people doing really long turns, only one turn, changing between the team pursuit team, not going all the way to the back. And yeah, it's really interesting to watch, and I think it's kind of opened the eyes of some of the national teams to, maybe we should try and mix this up a bit and not go with a kind of conventional team pursuit standard ride.
Oh, 100%. I remember the Poms years and years ago, 2000, I think, maybe just after 2000, they experimented with Jason Quealy. They experimented with him doing 1K on the front.
Yeah.
And then just leaving 3 guys for 3K. But I think their major problem was just his seated power was so much that he just absolutely loaded up the guy in second wheel, and they ended up abandoning it. But there's definitely, the tradition is 1.5 or 2 laps on the front, swing to fourth wheel, and away you go. But you can see this team has they've definitely switched that up a little bit. Hey, just shifting gears now and talking about power and speed, we better give these Dutchies a mention. I mean, holy smokes, did they just tear the blimmin' chain off their bikes in the sprint qualifying, team sprints? I mean, they were just untouchable, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. They were going so fast as well. And yeah, it's interesting. Well, what you think as to why they were so dominant at these worlds in the sprint event?
I think it's the competition. They've got this beat team, and they've got such a good group of guys that they're actually mates. They train hard together day in, day out. They're in the gym day in, day out. I'm actually good friends with Teo Boss. I mean, I've known him since he was about 16 years of age, and I chat to him quite often, and it's just that camaraderie, and they just challenge each other, and I mean, they just get stronger and stronger. I remember speaking with Eddie Dawkins, who's our New Zealand sprinter. Our New Zealand sprinters don't qualify perfectly because their main concentration is the team sprint, which I'll explain to our listeners the difference there. So a qualifying sprint is basically a flying lap as fast as you can, and you get timed from the 200-metre mark to the finish line. So this is all well and good, and of course you've got to go flat stick, but what they do now, they're so strong, these riders, that they put on 140, 150-inch gear, and Eddie Dawkins explained it. He says it's just like doing 40 reps in the leg press as hard as you can. Like there's not a lot of pedaling technique or fluency. It's just the bigger, the stronger, the bigger gear you can ride, the faster you'll go for 200 meters. And then whereas Olympic sprint, you can't push that gear because you have to start from zero. You've got a guy that starts the Olympic sprint who rips around in 17.1 second laps for an opening lap. If you're on 140 or 150 inch gear, you're going to be half a lap down from a zero.
By the time you get going, yeah.
So you have to have that. You have to have that pedaling fluency. You still actually have to be able to pedal at 130, 140 RPM because firstly you have to get it off the line and then you have to go fast. So yes, it's quite interesting to hear the tactics of that sort of race from one of the world's best sprinters.
Yeah, I think that's all very well and good, but then obviously you have a good seed after the 200 metres by doing that, but then you also need to be able to race as well. You see in the match sprints where they go head to head, 2 on the track at a time for 3 laps, and it's basically a game of cat and mouse, isn't it? Someone wants to normally lead it out. And it's quite exciting. Sometimes they kind of are quicker early on, and then sometimes they're not even sprinting what it looks like till about 100 metres to go. So they've obviously been working tactically, and like you said, with the fact that there's a team of them, I think that obviously really helps. They have a lot of opportunity to race each other in training, and if they're the best in the world, they're going to be pushing each other day in, day out. I know, like for us in the team pursuit, there were so many of us pushing each other. You're fighting for selection, so not only do you want to, you're trying to be the best, you're trying to beat your teammates at the same time. So it really kind of brings everyone on to the best that they can be as well. So I think we're seeing that with the Dutch riders. Also now it looks like, going back to the Australian women team pursuit, they've got a really strong kind of base of riders that are all trying to be selected. And that just kind of brings on everyone's form and talent because they're all fighting for that spot.
Oh, there's no question that some healthy competition that definitely brings the mongrel out, and it definitely brings out those couple of percenters, doesn't it? I was just watching a few of the sprints, and I was at the World Champs the last couple of years, and these guys that win the world titles, they still actually sprint on 140-inch gear, but you'll notice nowadays that they circle the top of the banking, and they're probably circling at 40, 45k an hour, so no one can jump them, and they've got a certain RPM going so that when they do accelerate, they can still ride. I mean, you see them doing match sprints, and they'll do their match sprint in 9.9, or 9.8. So what that means is if I'm doing 9.8 on the bottom of the track and you're racing me, that means you effectively have to do a 9.6 or a 9.5 to pass me because you've got to go around the outside of me. And that math just doesn't work, It's like, so the sprints have all... I mean, I don't want to say they've got boring because I absolutely love them and I'm in awe of the speed and I'm in awe of the strength that they have. But I say bring back the days of Michael Hubner and Jens Fiedler and Gary Niewand, where they were riding 92, 94-inch gear, and they went from the bottom of the track to the top of the track, and they were trying to throw each other over the barriers.
Yeah,
that was sprinting.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you say that because watching these World Championships, you don't see many track stands anymore, do you? And that's probably why I think they're winding up so much quicker. They just want a kind of fast sprint. Obviously, they're riding these bigger gears. So if they're track standing, they've got to get that gear off the line again. They roll off the start line. So, I totally agree with what you're saying. And, bring back the small gears. I think that would be a lot more interesting. Although, like you say, I do love the sprint. We
could put a petition in and make a gear restriction.
Shall we? That would be good.
The little Malaysian boy, Azizul Awang.
Yeah.
He's coached by John Beasley. And he has a problem in the sprints because he wants to slow it down as much as possible because he's got such a low body weight compared to these
smaller
big
guys,
sprinters.
Yeah.
So his acceleration is like super snappy.
Amazing. Yeah.
But they know this, so they keep rolling at 45 k's an hour around the top of the banking, so they can't be surprised by a jump, and then they just get faster and faster and faster, and then all of a sudden, you're not coming around if they're doing 71, you're not doing 75 to come past them.
Yeah, no way. Me and Matt were actually having a conversation earlier about cadence and saying how it's so good for, kind of going a little bit off topic here, but how it's great for young riders to be on the track, to start young, because it gives you that kind of good pedaling efficiency, the high cadence, which I think is hard to train as you get older. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you've got to... What I always say is, like, the pedal stroke isn't just about pushing the legs down, You've got a full circle in which you have to be really, really efficient and really, really powerful. And so track cycling is one of the best ways of finding a nice pedaling technique, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And then, like, a lot of the good road guys have always come off the track. You look at Geraint Thomas, looking at the British, Bradley Wiggins,
Greg Henderson.
Yeah, yourself. Obviously a track and road weapon that started on the track. The Yates brothers, they were on the track before the road. I just think it really helps that they all look good on the road. They've all got that fluid pedaling style. Where they're going to be, like you say, the most efficient, getting that power all the way around the pedaling.
Well, it's been lovely to chat to you, and we hope to get you back on the podcast on a regular basis. That would be great to have a chat, and when we can. It's always much nicer talking to you than Matt, that's for sure. And
maybe we should kick him out.
Kick Matt out, and then.
I'm only joking. I think he does a very good job on the podcast.
Nah, he's good. He's a legend. He's a weapon too. Righto, it was a pleasure. You have a good evening, and I'll have a good day.
You do that. Take care. Thank you very much for having me, and I hopefully speak to you all soon.
Well, there was a fairly comprehensive chat there you guys had. A good insight into the track champs. And I think the thing that stands out is obviously, I guess, the switch in dominance from the Brits to other nationalities. I guess the Dutch and Australians.
Absolutely, Matt. Fantastic to see Australia doing so well there. And there actually has been a real emphasis on track cycling in Australia since the last Olympics. And while it's exciting to see the way Australia performed at these World Championships, in the back of my mind, the concern is that Olympic cycle, the Brits always come back. I don't know, you might have some more information on this. Do they not take the World Championships as seriously as other countries? Do they taper over a longer period and just look at the Olympic cycle? Or what's the go there, Matt?
I'm not too sure, but all I know is from when Dani was in the setup. Certainly, the year after the Olympic cycle is kind of a soft year, and riders would take a big chunk of time off and wouldn't be as physically good, and the team would be selected perhaps a weaker, younger team. But I think a year out from the Olympics, I think they're looking to perform, looking for qualification points, and looking to cement their place in the team. Because with these the big track nations, even getting a ride, being selected for your nation, that's kind of, you've got to be on world standard, Olympic standard form just to get selection sometimes. So I think the tables may be turning slightly, and it's probably healthy for the sport. I mean, I think unless you're British, you're probably sick of seeing so much British success.
Well, I guess I've got a question for you, Greg, in relation to that. I don't see why a country can't be good at World Championships and the Olympics. It seems that Australia is good for World Championships and we don't get it right at the Olympics, and the Brits are vice versa to that. So what's your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't actually say that they're not any good. If you go by times, let's just take the teens pursuit, for example. The Aussies are still going absolutely world record pace, clearly. So I wouldn't say they're going bad. I just think and it's been spoken about before, I just think the Great Britain team, they cycle. They do a 4-year cycle. And I know, speaking to Dave Brailsford and Shane Sutton way back in the day when I was riding the Sky, it was always about a 4-year cycle. So I think that's what because that's where all their funding comes from, is Olympic medals, not World Championships.
Yeah.
And it's funny thinking back. There's a claim after the Rio Olympics from, I think it was from the French, saying, that the British have got rounder wheels. I don't know if you remember hearing about that, but it was the idea that for the Olympics, the Brits suddenly bring out all this new fantastic kit. And there are, there are kind of bits of hardware. I think the new forks, new frames for the Olympics. But yeah, I think the wheels are equally round that the other nations.
Yeah, but you know what that is? That's psychological. Like having ridden with Sky for 2 years, that's a massive part of what they do. Is they keep things all secret, and then they announce this skin suit that might be fast, made of this material. It's probably not even faster at all, but because it's backed by such a big company or a big team, people start to think, oh shit, this must be amazing, this new material. Same with the wheels. Oh, these wheels must be incredible. So it's psychological. It gets in their heads, and I tell you, it's how much the mind games play at that level. I'm sure that's half the battle won right there.
Yeah, you can imagine it's been sat in the pits, and yeah, kind of a British or the Australian, a big cycling nation kind of next to you. And you're just going to be kind of looking over, what are they doing? And every little thing they do, every little drink they have, you're thinking, what energy drink are they taking? What gels are they taking? When are they warming
exactly.
up? And just trying to copy them, as opposed to just having confidence in what you're doing. And it's just, those mind games.
That's a good thing to take away.
Interesting one.
Good thing to take away is just be absolutely confident in what you're doing. You've done the training, you've done the preparation. This is what you've got to perform and produce on the day. I mean, I've seen the Great Britain team with covers over their bikes, like a big sheet over the bikes covering up like they've got something secret hidden. And then, of course, when they bring them out, yeah, no, it's true though, in the pits, so they've got so you can't see. You're like, oh, gee, what have they got? What's new? And then, they take the cover off on race day and it's just the same bikes.
It's all that hype then, isn't it? And you've got all other nations then in the hotel rooms the day before competition kind of thinking, hypothesizing what is underneath those blankets, what have they got this year. Yeah, interesting. Just touch on the Americans. One female superstar was obviously missing from the American setup this Worlds due to injury, Chloe Dygert. She's obviously going to be a great addition for the Olympics, and I think she could single-handedly turn, especially that team pursuit team, turn that team pursuit team round and really be in the mix there with Australia and Great Britain.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely agree.
I guess one of the main points that I took from the interview there, Greg, was that track cycling is really affected by funding and the Olympics in terms of events being put in, events being taken out and so on, and who's getting funding. Like it seems to be, especially in Australia, it's a real topic of contention in terms of who's getting what funding, is the event in the Olympics or not, is in or out, and it's really, it affects the culture of the sport. Like you made the comment about there's no kilo, there's no individual pursuit Olympics anymore, and they were our staple events, weren't they?
I mean, in individual pursuit, that is kind of, for me, kind of like the holy grail. Actually, like individual pursuit and team pursuit, they're the two events that, I think should definitely be in the Olympics. But it's a shame to lose it.
Oh, well, it is what it is. And, it's still going to be, Olympic Games comes around, it's still going to be an awesome Olympic Games.
All right. Well, again, great chat you had with Dani there. Loads of great insight. Okay, so moving on to the session that we're going to look at today, the session deep dive. The session is John's Short Mix. Now, John is John Mayfield, who's one of the co-founders of Zwift. Probably not the most recognisable name within the Zwift world, but certainly one of the most influential. And John is kind of responsible for creating the game, kind of the technical side of things. So John's Short Mix, a 30-minute session. Let's have a look at that. What do you make of the session, guys?
Yeah, well, this is the most popular workout on Zwift. It's been completed the most, and apparently it's the one that people fail the most as well. It seems to be a bit of a challenge to complete it. So I'll talk you through what it is. As you said, it's John's Short Mix. There is two on Zwift. There's John's longer one and then also the Short Mix. The Short Mix is just over 30 minutes and it comprises of 2 1-minute very high intensity intervals. And then we have 3 10-second high intensity intervals. And then we have a 10-minute sweet spot effort at the end. So in theory, it sounds achievable, but the intensity is quite high. So if you're after a good, short, hard workout, then it's certainly one to have a go and see if you can complete it.
I think what they're trying to achieve there is every energy system that the body has. It's like a massive anaerobic workout there to begin with, and then finish off with an aerobic sweet spot session. So it's when you're limited for time and you want to touch on every system, every energy system that we have, then that's a good one to have a crack at. But I tell you, I've had a go at it myself, and I've had to drop the old FTP there a little bit, I can tell you.
Good man. I think it's quite a smart session. Obviously, you got those zone 5, zone 6 efforts early on, really stimulate load of lactate and that fatigue. And then you kind of the sweet spot then kind of the works, you're riding on tired legs. And so kind of, you're tricking your body almost into working really hard, but it doesn't feel too hard towards the end of the session. And the beauty of it, it's only half an hour. So everyone's always got time to squeeze half an hour in somewhere in their day. So great session, great kind of hit style session. As you said, hits all your energy systems. Give it a go and see how far you get. All right. Cycling terminology. Grego, you're on the button, mate. Kev, you okay to get the clock
Ready
on?
to go.
All right, Greg, you ready, mate? Your terminology to explain to us is the word stagiaire.
Okay, a stagiaire is an apprentice almost. It can happen from August on in the pro cycling season. It doesn't necessarily mean that he will then ride for the team that he's stagiairing for or being an apprentice for, but he actually gets the opportunity to come and ride in a pro team situation. That's a stagiaire, an apprentice.
3, 2, 1. You did well.
Time to spare as well. So, were you ever a stagiaire, Greg?
No, I went straight to. They signed me up for just megabucks.
Biggest mistake of their life.
It's a good point you make, though, Greg, in terms of the stagiaires aren't guaranteed a spot in the pro team. In some ways, you might be better off not being a stagiaire if you can get signed straight up. It's not a definite pathway.
I remember Ian Stannard was a stagiaire on T-Mobile when I was there. And then I think even Geraint Thomas might have as well. So it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to come Cav, but it doesn't necessarily mean they actually come in there and ride for our team. It's just like they can actually get picked up. What it does is it puts them on display to every director, because it's such a closed network. So every director knows everybody else, and they're like, oh, who's your stagiaire? Oh, look, we've got Ian Stannard, and then we haven't got room for him, and then they're like, okay, next thing, whoever else, Quick Step take him up, or I think one of the Italian teams end up taking up Ian Stannard for a couple of seasons.
Yeah, and can you only be a stagiaire once, or do you get as many bites of the cherry year after year? If you don't get a pro contract, can you be a stagiaire the following year and keep going?
No. You just get one crack at it, mate.
It is one, is it? Right. Big. Yeah, it's just like going for. Yeah, but is it, as you say, it's an audition, isn't it? Big pressure.
It's great though, I tell you, because by the time you get to August, you're a little bit tired and you're a little bit lacking in motivation, and then the stagiaires come along and they are just chomping at the bit to get into this bike race in the rain and the cold, and you're like, good boys, get up there, you chase those moves, good on ya.
Yeah. you can always see kind of stagiaires in Zwift racing. There's lots of Zwift teams now that are competing in the community league on a Thursday evening, and there's people trying to get in these teams and having trial rides. So again, the stagiaire is not just a World Tour Pro thing. It's happening in the Zwift community as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just waiting for my call up. Moving on. Quick fire question, guys. Very simple question here. We've got carbon wheels during the winter. Acceptable, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to say yes as well.
Jeez, we're boring.
Yeah, it depends on weather, but I will say yes. I mean, if you live in the UK, I don't know, do you want to be using your good carbon wheels in the winter, or do you want to kind of save them for best? Maybe save them for best, but if the weather's good.
Carbon wheels are year round now. I think when they started using carbon wheels in Roubaix, that was the moment that the rest of us decided, okay, I'm going to use them all year round now. If they can ride them in Roubaix and those sort of conditions, then they're good enough for me year round.
Yeah. I was thinking more of the kind of, I've gone out and spent $2,000 on these swanky new zips. Do I want to let them corrode in my garage? Because I'm not. I hate cleaning bikes. I do it, but I hate cleaning bikes, and I'll be tempted sometimes to chuck my bike in the garage without giving it a good clean.
Well, that's easily solved, mate. Don't go out in the rain.
Yeah. Or
Get
just
on
go
Zwift.
Get on Zwift and only ride on Zwift in training camps. Yeah.
And then move to a country that doesn't rain as much, mate. Just shift towns.
Shift towns, yeah. You know, come the summer, I always think it's nice. I've got kind of a training bike and a racing bike. Come the summer, it's nice to jump on my race bike, and it's nice to be like, wow, this is, I'm on my race bike. You feel it feels better. You're flying, and then put your winter bike away.
It is true, though, isn't it? I love it when you jump on the race bike. I mean, my training bike was exactly the same as my race bike, but I tell you, when I went to a race and jumped, it was just faster. I don't know what it is, but it's just, I don't know. Probably less kilometers through the bottom bracket as well. So it's probably more rigid, but yeah, I just love jumping on the race bike. I think also, I think you were trying to touch on, is it's again a mental thing too, isn't it? You're on your race bike, you feel faster.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess you're physically fresher, and when you go to a race, you're fresher, aren't you? So all combined.
I would like to know how many Zwift users have a nice deep carbon wheel as their front wheel on their Zwift setup.
Yeah, that would be interesting, wouldn't it? Because you think about it nowadays, though, like when you buy a bike, they all come with deep dish wheels. Like
it comes with it, yeah.
Because Giant do their own version of a deep section wheel. So, and then of course Specialized do their own version of a deep dish wheel. So it's I just don't think you can buy a spoked wheel like alloy rim now, can you?
I say that because I'm actually that guy. It's the only wheel I had, so I put it in the front, and I look down and I've got this big deep carbon wheel. I think, what's the point of that being there? But anyway, it's holding the front up, so it's doing its job.
All right, guys, we can let's move on to Q&A section. So, first question is from Claudia Boering, that was on the Zwift training camp that we held in start of December. And Claudia's question is, do you think that someone that does really well in Zwift racing can have the same success in real life racing? And what is your number one advice for someone that would like to go pro if they primarily train on Zwift? So, can someone that is great on Zwift also be great in real life, out on the road? And I think the answer is yes. I mean, you can definitely do well. I mean, a good road rider will do well on Zwift. But obviously there is more to it. They are not quite perfectly transferable. But just looking at the demands of Zwift racing, you need to be powerful. You need to have some staying power, so kind of an element of endurance. And of course, to do well, you need to be fast. And different courses require different demands. So the small volcano loop is more like a criterium. You're doing efforts every minute or so up into and through the volcano. Where some of the bigger, wider loops, like around London or Richmond, are a bit more like a road race. But there's definitely a crossover in physical demands from Zwift to road racing.
Physical demands, totally. I totally agree. But the only, that's the perfect answer. But the one thing I would add is, the tactical whereabouts and positioning in a bunch. You can just save so much energy if you know where to be and when to be there in the peloton out in the real world. Especially when you take into account crosswinds or some cobble section or any type of acceleration out of a corner on Zwift. It's not as bad if you're a little bit back in the peloton out of a tight corner, but in the real life peloton, you want to be up near the front because you don't want that accordion effect. So it's just, if you've got the motor, so to speak, the endurance, you've got the capacity of a good athlete, the next thing to learn is bunch awareness and racing comfortably and confidently.
And I guess, yeah, and you said it yourself, Greg. As a pro, you never had the biggest engine, but you were smart with it, and you looked at other ways. The skin suit, you kind of pioneer in the skin suit, and just being super tactically aware, good positioning in the bunch. That was your strength. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's that many guys way stronger than me. If you just got on an ergo and said, right, go for 5 minutes, but they would never beat me. So it was just there's so much more that comes into it in a bunch race.
Yeah, look, and to answer the second part of that question there about someone that trains on Zwift and wants to go pro, the answer there is get involved with Zwift Academy. We know that it is a legitimate pathway through to the pro ranks, and people have done it successfully. So if you're looking for a different way to turn pro, it's certainly worthwhile having a crack at.
Yeah, great point. And I guess the number one bit of advice I would give is just join a club and kind of ride outside a little bit, for that bike handling side of things, and you're going to become super strong on Zwift. And physically, as saying, you can get all you need from Zwift. But joining a club, riding with a group often is gonna pay dividends. Question 2 then, guys, is from Tom Smalley, which was also given to us on the Zwift camp. And Tom's question goes: I'm always following a training plan on Zwift, but I do some outdoor riding. How do I best go about fitting in a special Zwift event like a Gran Fondo or an extra in real life ride alongside and as part of the training plan I'm following in Zwift? And I guess this question we've kind of answered in parts over a few different podcasts. So it's just to kind of bottom it out. How do you fit kind of a one-off event, a Zwift Fondo or an in real life ride? How do you fit those one-off things alongside or in and amongst your Zwift training plan?
I think the easiest thing to do is pick the day on your Zwift training program that might be an endurance-based day, and if it's a nice day outside, pick your bike up off the turbo and go outside and enjoy it. If it's because if it's an endurance ride that you need to do, endurance is endurance, so you can get it inside or outside. That would be one way of doing it. There's no question there. But I think what I really love about Zwift and ergo training is the specificity. So if you do have a really intense structured workout coming up, they're the days that you want to do on Zwift and on a trainer. But your endurance rides, sure, go outside and enjoy it.
And in these Zwift training plans, they are an example of generally what good looks like, and it's going to point you very much in the right direction. But it's not an exact science. If you substitute one day or miss a day or do an extra day, it ain't going to change too much. It's the kind of consistency over the long haul, over the weeks, that make the difference. So swapping one ride here or there, absolutely no problem whatsoever. This is, the training plans have got to fit around you and your lifestyle. So just apply a bit of common sense. But as Greg said, taking the longest, the steadier session, kind of maybe the free ride as part of the training plan, and doing a big long Fondo on Zwift or a big sportif, no problem whatsoever. All right. Question 3. Now this is a real key question, and something I didn't ask you guys too much about when we talk about track cycling, because I think there is a crossover between this question and track cycling. And the question is from Christian Killenberg, young Norwegian chap who's got a bright future ahead of him, who joined us on the Zwift training camp. And Christian's question says, how important is weight and strength training for the different types of cycling specialities other than sprinting, i.e. time trialing and climbing? So I guess this, guys, opportunity, let's open up on the gym, so strength training, talking about maybe the track and the role it plays for track cycling, and as well as other forms of cycling.
It's a major factor now in track cycling. It's something we actually didn't get around to talking about too much. And I mean, if you look at the way track cycling, the components of it has changed so much. The gear ratios that they're riding nowadays, there's so much strength involved now. I think I mentioned on the podcast, Eddie Dawkins, a mate of mine, one of the top sprinters in the world, he said the 200 metre qualifying now, it's just like doing 40 reps in the leg press. They just put on that bigger gear, and it's just, so yeah, for track cycling, it's such a massive part of their training. It's I remember back in my day, you could, if there was a session you skip, it would be your gym session now, but that's absolutely reversed now. That gym sessions are never skipped.
Yeah, I would say it's certainly something that I think was misunderstood going back 10 years or so ago, where some people were doing gym training and others were very vocally against it. But we now know that any bike rider should be doing some form of gym work, whether you're a climber, a sprinter, a track rider, or time trialist. And there's gains to be made there for everyone.
And why? What can you get from the gym then that you can't get on the bike? So there's low cadence strength efforts, standing starts. It's all producing that massive crank torque, really stressing yourself maximum in terms of your strength. What's the gym giving you then that you can't do on the bike?
You can go to failure. You can go to absolute 100% failure. You can recruit every single muscle fibre that's needed to be used in that slow repetition. And it's about recruiting muscle fibres, and touch on the misconception that climbers shouldn't do it, because they'll bulk up, or bulking up's called hypertrophy, and that's when, you put size on. But if you do a small amount of reps on a very, very high load, you don't actually put size on at all. You just gain strength. You only go into hypertrophy once you actually in the presence of lactic acid or hydrogen ions. So if you don't go lactic in your squats or your leg press, you won't actually put on size, but you can still gain strength. So you'll see Chris Froome in there, doing his deadlifts and his squats and whatnot. So it's it's definitely come in leaps and bounds, the strength training in the gym.
And how would the different types of strength training in the gym vary from a sprinter to a climber, let's say?
Well, it's funny there that you mentioned strength training, because that's obviously one of the phases that we go through in the gym. So I guess to be more technical, we refer to it as gym work, because everyone goes through the initial phase of building some sort of strength first, but then whether you're a sprinter or a climber or a time trialist, you're then going to go into being more specific of the demands of your event in terms of the power output. And what we use in the gym now is velocity-based training, where we're looking at how fast you're moving the weight and we're trying to replicate the demands of the event. So a sprinter, we know how fast at a certain cadence and a certain power, how fast in terms of meters per second he's moving the cranks. We can do that in the gym as well now. And a time trialer might be different to the sprinter and different to the climber as well. So after going through our strength phase, we're then getting into the more specific demands of the event and replicating that as closely as we can in the gym. And obviously that's through power work as well. So it's all about moving the weight as fast as you can and measuring the speed of that weight as well.
Okay, so just to make sure I'm clear on this, for a sprinter on the leg press, obviously a very heavy weight, you're going to push that as hard as you can and move it as quickly as possible, versus a climber who would be wouldn't be looking for that absolutely explosive element to the...
Yeah, so it's still going to be explosive, but it's going to be a different speed and obviously a lighter weight as well. But yeah, Greg really raised a key point there in terms of a lot of the gym work now is done to 30 seconds. Now, we used to go through, it was very standard 6 to 8 reps or 6 to 10 reps for a different movement. But now, in terms of breaking down lactic acid and building up muscle or not building up muscle, we're going for that 30, 40 seconds. And a lot of the movements are now actually timed rather than on reps. So we're looking for, leg press, one leg press. We're doing a minute sometimes, or we're doing 30 seconds like Greg said. So it really is about timing it and also the power involved in moving the weight.
Great. And applying all what you said, if there was a handful of exercises in the gym that people should look into, obviously with the right guidance and making sure you got the proper form, what were those exercises?
I don't reckon you can go past the squat, the back squat. That it incorporates your core, your back, your legs. I think if there was one exercise that I would prescribe, it would be the back squat.
Yeah, definitely that one. I was just going to say that any sort of bike rider is going to go through the initial strength building phase. That's the same for everyone across the board. And then when we start moving into the power phase and the acceleration phase, that's where the movements get quite different. So for someone like a climber, a lot of plyometric type of work, box jumps, even things like skipping. That's something we introduced to the riders last year. Now, to get a rider to do 5 minutes of skipping, it's very fatiguing, but it's also a lot of muscle contraction and a lot of strength involved there as well. So it's a good one to do. And a lot of one-legged movements now as well. to obviously be replicating the pedal stroke as well. So that's probably a key point there, is that we're replicating the movement of the athlete. In this case, it's pedaling. So we do that one-legged normally in terms of one side at a time. So we do that in the gym as well.
Awesome. And if you one final question for me, if you were gonna do gym and a road ride, say a steady road ride in the same day, which would you do in the morning? Which would be the afternoon session?
I personally get the gym out the way when you're fresh, because it depends what phase of the gym session you're at to, if you want to build strength, power, all that sort of thing. But typically, gym's done in the morning, and your road ride in the afternoon is usually, because gym is so hard and it's such a stressful event now. It's usually just a steady ride in the afternoon with that on tired legs.
Ooh, I'm gonna go a bit different there, actually, Greg. Yeah, look. The way I guess personally I do it is that we would the day is set aside as it's a very high intensity day, and we would do a really anaerobic session in the morning on the road. Might do 2 to 3 hours of sprints or lactic acid type work, and then we'd have a 2 or 3 hour break, and then hit the gym after that. And the thinking and the theory there is that we're bike riders before we're gym people. So we're making that our priority there. And regardless of what you eat afterwards, there is that depletion of carbohydrates in the muscles. And then when we go to the gym and perform our gym work, we're getting a better response because of that depleted muscle glycogen. So, there's some gains to be made there. But I guess, look, the key point is...
Oh, no, just a question. It's like if you're in a max strength phase, like you've got a diminishing return there when you're actually hitting the gym in a slightly fatigued state.
Yeah, but I guess the point we're making here is that fatigue state is giving you a better response in terms of the muscle fibers, because we're looking for a lack of muscle glycogen to get the response, and it needs to be depleted with the road ride in the morning first. So that's the theory there.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah, there's
interesting one.
Although in saying that as well, track riders obviously, the point there, I'm talking about road riders here. Track riders, and your experience there would be, I would agree, to do the gym work first, but my opinion is for road riders, gym second, riding first.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
And I guess for most of us who have jobs and stuff, you may have a gym in work, and you can only do, or maybe you can only do the gym at lunch. So you've kind of got to obviously fit your double days. If you are lucky enough to be able to do double days, do them whenever your lifestyle permits. So
have you seen the track sprinters in the gym? I actually just go and watch them sometimes. They're just impressive to watch. The amount of weight that they move, and the thing that they actually use a lot is full body movements, which is like, these almost the Olympic style lifting. They do a lot of that, and the amount of weight that those boys can move, it's so impressive. It's incredible to watch. I remember I was lucky enough to be in Manchester when we were doing a training camp there one year for Commonwealth Games, I think, and so Chris Hoy was in the gym, and he was doing a leg press, and they'd run out of weights on the side of the leg press. So Shane Sutton jumps on top of the leg press machine, and so Chris Hoy starts doing leg presses fully loaded with old Sutto sitting on top.
It's impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, that's awesome. And that, if you Google it, if you search Chris Hoy leg press, you can find that photo.
No way.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. Quality. And literally it's loaded up. Yeah, I dread to think how much weight. I think it's over half a ton, I'm sure.
Is there a photo of it?
Ridiculous, but yeah, ridiculous. Yeah. Google.
I gotta have a look.
Chris Hoy leg press.
Yeah,
it was in a magazine.
I was in there when they were doing it, and we just stopped what we were doing and just started watching that. Holy smokes.
Awesome. All right, guys. Question 4. And this was sent on Facebook by Matt Keffer. So thanks for the question, Matt. Matt's question goes, how do you best incorporate Zwift racing into a training plan? For example, 2 days of 1 hour max effort racing. What to do the other 5 days? Now, this question we've kind of spoken around Zwift racing a bit before, but specifically answer this question. taking a seven day week. For someone who isn't a pro, I would say, try and, if you can train 5 days a week and take 2 days a week as rest alongside a stressful normal life, that's a good basis. And within that 5 days of training, if your goal is just to become fitter, stronger, enjoy your cycling more, and just generally, and you don't really have a specific goal in mind, getting stuck into 2 Zwift races a week, probably about right. If you've got a specific goal and you're trying to build towards that, and maybe you are in a build phase, I still think Zwift racing has a place in your week, but only once a week. I would say an hour-long Zwift race. It's a huge stress on your body, physically and mentally, and it will give you a boost in fitness. But we need to kind of make sure we are kind of building up in a sustainable, kind of periodized manner. So if you are in a build phase, just don't get too carried away with, and it's easy to get carried away with the Zwift racing, because you've got the leaderboards and you've got Zwift Power, you can see all your results and you're setting PBs and you've got teammates. It is easy to get not sucked in, but just do a lot of Zwift racing, where maybe some Zwift workouts may be a better approach. But yeah, I think the magic formula is really, I guess, Zwift racing a little bit during the week, along with some workouts, some steady state riding, and perhaps a free ride or a weekend ride out on the road on the weekend. And that's obviously where Zwift and road cycling complement each other.
Mate, bang on, Rowie. I just, you're not as dumb as you look, are you?
Well, I'll get back to my tea now. Again, we covered that one a little bit before, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a bit of a view on that. And as a follow-on to that question, we've got a question from Dan Rose, also on Facebook. It's an interesting question, this. And the question reads, should over 40s be doing these type of efforts? And he means Zwift racing. So should over 40-year-olds be Zwift
racing? Well, I'll firstly comment on that, because over 40 is not that old anymore. But speaking physiologically, we actually only just covered this not long ago. And as you do get older, you start losing your type 2B muscle fibers, which are your fast twitch fibers, your power ones, the ones that use a lot of glycogen, a lot of sugar, and produce a lot of, obviously, they're very messy, so they're byproducts, lactic acid or hydrogen ions. So, and the old saying is, if you don't use it, you lose it. So there's definitely, you definitely have to, you have to do the hard, intense stuff, otherwise, because as you get older, you're going to start losing those muscle fibers anyway. So you have to stimulate those muscle fibers as much as possible, and there's no better way than that Zwift racing, because you know how hard that is from the start, and then the attacks on the hills and the accelerations. And so absolutely, over 40, mate, you're still young at 40, so don't worry about that. So and just get into the absolutely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if the question read, should over 70s be doing these type of Zwift these efforts, maybe kind of limit them. But for 40s, I completely agree. 40 is young, and actually the majority of cyclists are probably in that bracket. I mean, a lot of people find cycling fairly late in life, as it's a non-weight bearing sport exercise. So it's less demanding and places less stress on knees and your joints compared to running. And I think you find a lot of runners kind of convert to cycling midlife, so in their 40s. So I think cycling, Zwift and Zwift racing is absolutely perfect for over 40s, over 50s, the older person for sure.
Absolutely, mate.
Yeah, no, I think.
I wonder what the oldest Zwifter is.
Average age.
I wonder what the oldest Zwifter is. I bet there's a Zwifter in their 90s.
That would be impressive. I've passed a fella who, how when he had his age written beside it. I'm sure he was like late 70s. It was like, say, Barry, 79 years. That was his name. It was pretty impressive. Hey, do you want to hear something real cool? So we did the Biodex machine yesterday in the lab, and it was about contraction rate of muscles and whether you're eccentric.
So, what's the machine?
It's a Biodex, and it's a you strap your leg in, and anyway, long story short, I broke the record, mate. They couldn't bloody they set the machine.
You got the record for the shortest contraction.
I was impressed with myself. But I didn't realise how much stronger an eccentric contraction was over a concentric contraction. I was really, really surprised by that.
That's really incredible to actually measure, isn't it? Like, we always talk about how much stronger we are in eccentric movements, but until you measure it, you don't really realise it, and it's hugely different, isn't it?
Unbelievable. And then, of course, the speed too. So it was really interesting because they started relating it to crank length, because the guy was a cyclist that was the lab, what do they call themselves? Professor or what? He's not a professor, he's a PhD. Anyway, they started relating it to crank length, torque, and RPM. So it was really interesting lab for me because it was just so relatable. And
it would be. Yeah.
Highest power output by the AIS when they tested crank length was 135 mil cranks, and they tested everything from 120 to 200 millimeters. 135 millimeter crank was the highest power.
Jeez.
Like kiddie cranks you get on a tandem.
Yeah, mate.
135s.
Because then the other thing, Rower, you think about this, and this is really interesting too, is like you think about you riding, say if you rode 172 and a halves, and then I went smaller and I rode 170s, that's only 2.5 mil, but your legs are about 8 centimeters longer than mine. So in actual fact, if I had to do the same small extension as you do in your hip angle, I'd have to ride about 100 mil cranks or something like that. So there's no real good explanation, and a lot of people have said the explanation comes from just the big manufacturers can't be bothered making cranks from anything more than 165s to 180s.
All right, guys, episode 23 on track cycling. Good to chat as always. We'll see you on the next podcast.
Yeah, mate, looking forward to it, and hopefully we'll see you in Los Angeles, and maybe we'll have a chat from LA.
Yeah, thanks guys, and we'll see you in LA next week.